Okay, so then we're back at the office, back at the base. There's this reptilian possessed the park ranger who's more like a handler at this point. He's standing to my left, and I'm trying with one hand to rebuke him, speaking in tongues against him, asking the Lord to call down holy fire in the situation and release me, calling fire down on him specifically. And then with my right hand, I'm fending off the great alien from advancing towards me with his black eyes from getting any closer to me. He was looking at me like he was going to jump me or something. Then my dad's sitting in the middle between us in a chair, looking like he's in a stupor or dumbfounded. I tell myself over and over, this is the last time I'm protecting him. Part of me wanted him to die, but part of me still hoped that he would change. So I think the Greys mess with his mind a lot, especially with tormented family relationships, and he was just spiritually and mentally weak to overcome them. So my dad would hear my child voice saying, like, "You're my dad, stop, get off me," when he used to rage and charge his head at me and kept grabbing my body to throw me down and choke me in the car. Sometimes I'd be able to snap him out of it, but he was just kind of spineless to let that evil inside of him, and he didn't have an excuse. So we're in this room with the Gray in this battle. It's like a standoff. It's like my dad was going to pull out his gun sometimes, but then the Gray would make him think it was me or something, this voice, because they can make you think that somebody's somebody else. And then he'd stop and get confused. Then the Gray would play back how he hurt me in his mind, and it's like he was viewing it for the first time, since like he had no memory of it. It would mentally break him each time the Gray messed with his head like that, and he would hear my voice, and then they would just keep accessing him. These are spiritual doors that, when opened, become access points to the enemy to come in and damage you more. It's like a spiritual battle for the minefields. It's a curse also of spiritual blindness, and another reason we need the mind of Christ, the mantle, the helmet of salvation, that shield firmly on our heads and our countenance right with God for his spirit to come in and fill us. Otherwise, it's like the dark cave we were in. If you don't know who the enemy is, you're stabbing in the dark at him. If you don't have that inner light shining, that lamp and that oil in you shining out of you, you're going to be in the darkness, and it's not a good advantage point in this world that's full of darkness. So God set the spark in me in that cave, and we got out of the cold darkness for good that day and into a better light. The game that these guys play is mental warfare. Guns are second. I've seen how they just hijack into the mind or into the heart. That's the two things that they go for the most, these Grays. The game that these guys play is not what you think. Angels and Christ himself I have seen and have experienced saving my life more times than I can count. The devil may have his informants and his targeting, but I have big, big help from on high, and I know that because I have a big, big God who loves me and pursued me in the wilderness. Now, the reptilian possessed handler ends up collapsed on the floor after this event, goes on the ground from a stroke it looked like, or heart attack or something, I still don't know. Then I grabbed his gun, shot the great alien life form in the head, who went bye-bye. That was to my right. My father snaps out of it, stands up in his chair. When an entity leaves a gray body, they just look like a pile of rubber sometimes, because it's a demon that actually leaves the body. Like the Screamo orange Gray that was hard to kill. It was like he would just stand there in the same spot, and then you'd kill him, and then it's like they would resurrect them in this game back to life. And then they would tell my dad like how good we did or something, because he acted like he had gotten an army medal or something when we'd leave these places. We never got any compensation. I have no idea what they gave him or what kind of things that they told him. It's like my dad's mental prison receded that day, and that look of fear wasn't so strong in him anymore after we overcame the Grays in that cave. We left free, and then one time we were in the car and we're like screaming about the Hicks and how stupid they were and our crazy conversations that would come out. Then we'd have silent treatment in a lot of car rides, fighting in car rides. We were in states of mind, and 2 states, mainly Wisconsin and Missouri, that was highly fragmented and absurd most of the time. So when we left the campground after the Screamo hunt, I stood in the camper door and I'm told my dad, like, those things could have killed me. And then he just shrugged it off and said, yeah, but they didn't. Because he had no shame. He cared more about numbers and how we did than us personally, caring for us. And I told my brother I was going to escape from these prison wardens and they didn't care about us, but he was kind of in his own world and he'd drift farther and farther away from me. And my dad acted like it was a privilege to do these things because the secret men running them told him it was. I mean, what reward was he getting? I don't know. He acted like he got a Purple Heart each time that we kicked ass. We never got any compensation, and it was child endangerment to call it lightly. But my dad would take the adrenochrome, like I said, look at the clock, act like a zombie. Then he started taking me on secret car rides like my grandfather did. I was in the back seat with a bunch of books. He said we were going to go see my aunt, which never happened. He ends up taking me on a 12-hour adrenochrome trip, and the Lord revealed to me in this experience that legions of demons have been trying to take me out since I was born for the work he has sent me here to do. And they know who we are. They study us from birth to find a chink in our armor. But the angels also have assignments with us and our guardians. But the demonic realm does too, and the marine spirits near Sheol at the bottom of the ocean. So my dad looked at me like he set his sights on me and was the reason I fully was made into an MK monarch, because he sold me out. And the Lord showed me that he will unravel that cocoon where nothing could pull me back out of. It has to be done carefully and with his help, though, to emerge as his butterfly, not theirs, and how they contort symbolism and good things like the rainbow and other things and counterfeit it. Anyone who looks back and like doesn't leave everything, including their own family, to follow the king, take up their cross and follow the master isn't worthy of the kingdom, he told me. When I was older, he'd put my hand to the plow, the Lord said, into this harvest field, but I had to get through and graduate this hard stuff first, or this initial stuff. And you would feel like you were a doll. Each altar and program part of you would just kind of fall back into their arms, like they had all the answers and they could put you back together. They'd call you out, send you out. It would feel like a piece of your soul would be taken each time and put back into your eye, kind of like a fragment when the mind control was over, and they'd shift your consciousness around somewhere else, like a spark. It felt like a spark or like a switch was turned on or off. But you were giving them the control to do that. So that's why you felt more helpless and more like doll-like each time. And the Lord showed me that the handlers were counterfeit to what he could do, which what he can do is give us life fully and abundantly, since he put the spark of life within us to begin with and gives us life abundantly if we seek him wholeheartedly. And he's the one who returns all soul fragments and cuts all soul ties with the sword. He does so much more. So me and my dad are driving in the dark. I'm praying and shaking off this death and sickness because I had contact with the adrenochrome, and it felt like little spikes were going into my legs and into my arms and my body and my brain. So after hours, it would be like sloughed off of me. You'd be delivered from it. And then we end up in the middle of nowhere. Then he takes another drop of the red elixir. It's like clockwork. And each time I just feel these pangs of fear. Then he ends up taking me to a ghost town, and we got lost at night. It was pretty scary. We couldn't find a place to stay. Then he leads me into the Tom Sawyer forest, and he sits on a log and he's staring blankly into the woods like he's on some kind of bad acid trip or something. And we couldn't find a town, so he says that we'll probably have to camp there. Then I start picking up pieces of wood and said that we could start a fire, but I'm not approaching him because I know it's not safe. And he's still looking like he's just staring into space. And he's looking at his knife, and he says to come near him and he'll cut my piece of kindling wood that I'm holding. So I basically like almost throw the piece of kindling wood at him because I didn't want to go near him because he's so sketchy. And I was given the gift of discerning of spirits, and I not only could see spirits, I could see like the demon Howdy that was in him and audibly hear the dialogue going on in that moment of the demon and my father's consciousness talking. So I could have the advantage that the Lord gave me of understanding the plans of the enemy through hearing dialogue of demons in people too, and the shifting in their faces. The Lord did this so I would have the advantage, know the enemy's plans ahead of time. And I walked back up to the car. I sat back in the back seat then. And it was a spiritual battle. We drove to another path. We were just lost. The demon would turn its head, and my father would look like he was going to sleep then. And then the demon would be in charge of his body, and it would just look at me and say, howdy. And then I'd sit in the passenger seat of the car, and I'd see the yellow eyes come out. But I would also feel God's shield around me and ask the Lord to make me like steel or iron, like unbreakable, like make my legs steel. The demon would try to get in and couldn't. I tried to push my legs apart, and they felt like iron pieces. And it was exhausting. And this went on for quite a while, but it was just this spiritual warfare where it could not breach my perimeter. And I don't know how long this lasted, but I did my best in these fights. Sometimes it got to me and would get me to do things, but most times it didn't. And if it did, I would just go into altar anyways. Then I went into the bathroom in this park after we got off this dirt trail and out of the car, and I was going to hide behind some campers and ask them if they could help me. But I thought in my head, like, what if Howdy starts yelling and takes out his gun and hurts somebody? And I didn't want anyone to get hurt. So then I just went and got back in the car with him. So God gave me a selfless desire that's also protected me too. Didn't make me vulnerable. In moments of my selflessness, he said, is where he also came in and protected me. So then we drove to this motel that had these white pillars, and I heard the dialogue of Howdy and my dad's conscious in the back seat, and all I could do was just pray and hope to survive in these situations. So then we go in here. My dad didn't want to pay the price and asked if we could sleep in the car in the parking lot. Then this woman gives us a room. She starts walking up the stony spiral staircase, and I go up after her. And I stood there on the steps, and then she just looks back at me and like told me that was her apartment, not our room. And I wanted to go with her, so I said, "Could I see it?" And then I felt relief in her presence when I went upstairs with her alone. And then she looks at me like if I was okay, and didn't really know what to do. And then she like asked me if that was really my dad up there, and I could barely speak. And I just shook my head yes. I wanted to stay with her, but me and my father end up getting a room upstairs. He makes me take a shower with him. He's still, the demon is still more in charge of his consciousness still, so I stayed away from him. I'm coloring on a book on the floor. I see the demon shift in his face as he's talking to me. At one point, he slams me against the wall when I spoke out against him. Then he starts staring at a postcard on a bed, and then he's rubbing his beard and thinking really hard, like going, So then in the morning, he takes me to this current river. He's like pulling my arm through this river. I'm like, what are we doing here? There's crowds of people. We go on this walking trail, and I thought it would be maybe okay now, but then he waits until people leave this area. And there's signs, of course, that say no swimming, dangerous. He tells me to come into this spring with him. And it had a no swimming sign around it. He said it'd be fun. I have my swimsuit on. I go in with him. He swims over to the deepest spot. There's a cliff behind his back. And then he tells me to see how strong I was again, if I was going to tread water in a circle for him for the longest time that I could. So I did, and, I'm used to him being kind of my handler, and my arms are really tired. And then as I try to go into his arms, these last few times, he just pushes me back out. And so I'm getting confused. And then he pulls me close to him, and then we both go under the water. And this is like very deep, clear spring water. And I could see his face to face. So under the water, he manifests this draconian demon to me with teeth and this wicked grin. Like he loves to make this crazy demon-looking face. And I went up out of the water with him, and he was laughing like it was nothing. He was joking around, but I saw exactly what was going on now. And then he says that you could sink the Statue of Liberty in this blue springs near Eminence, Missouri. And it's like clear and blue. And it looks like it goes down forever. So the demon was telling him that other bodies are down there. And he held my shoulders underwater the next time. So I'm fighting to get up out of this water, and my arms were too weak to swim. So I couldn't breathe. I start going into panic mode. We go down under the water again, and he's insanely smiling at me under the water, and I cry out, like, Jesus, save me. So I immediately feel something pull my hair, kind of like a fish hook, just pulls my hair like a wisp of white light went over me, like lightning, or a white big fish that just swam and grabbed me and took me right to the dock. And this happened in like a second. It was like a flash. It happened so fast. It was just, I was in shock. My little arms were just like shaking, holding on to the dock because the dock was so deep too. It was over my head. And he just told me, hurry, get up on the dock. And it was probably Yeshua's robe that was the white flash. And I was holding on the dock, and I took all my strength. My arms were giving way, and I gasped for air, crawled up onto the dock, flopped down, like half unconscious and gagging. And I just laid there. And I look over, and I see my father in the same spot staring at me at the edge with the cliff behind his back where we were. And then he motions for his hands, coaxing me back over to him, just smiling. So my body's shaking. I'm laying on this dock. It was cold. I felt like someone had stabbed me in the heart 10 times, or in the back. Yeshua was the white spirit that wrapped his arms around me. And it was like I was his little lamb, and he pressed his hand down into me, and I thought he was a glowing spirit fish at first that had swallowed me under the water until my eyes got clear. And then he was the real eminence around Eminence, Missouri that day. He just took all of that panic and just made it still, like totally peace, totally still, totally calm. And I was just warm and whole and complete and healed, like in a second. I was perfectly calm. And so many times he's come and just filled me from head to toe like that with the Spirit. And that's ministering, more than ministering. It's rescuing, it's saving. I'd never felt a love like this before in my life. I could breathe. Then he whispers to me, you were born into a holy war, knowing that even your own parents would try to kill you, but they, meaning the demonic realm and the marine spirits, can't take what belongs to the Lord. And he snatched me out of the devil's hand like a fish hook, pulling me up. And he saves his children every day all over the world and is always concerned for those who are his. And I understood everything that Yeshua told me. And I reached my hand up as I saw his glory light leaving the space and the atmosphere. And I wanted to go with him, but Heavenly Father's love is like this tough love, and he makes us stay here and fulfill our mission here on earth. And it just reminded me of Isaiah 12:3. It says, he was the fountains of salvation, living water that made my belly feel strong and refreshed in that moment, a wellspring of the source of life itself. He draws us out. And he literally took me and drew me out. Something just pulled my hair and drug me across that blue spring. And I realized that Yeshua felt the betrayal of the whole world, and that the betrayal I had to overcome within my own family was a trial too, to really walk into my commission and calling later in life. Because they could try to snatch and steal all my gifts away, strangulate me as much as they wanted, but they could never have my soul, never crush my spirit, because my God is an awesome God, and it's mighty to save. His arm's never too short to reach us, and he cares for us. And he showed me that the scary depth of that blue spring was like Sheol, the vision of hell below that they were trying to pull me into, and that he compensated that fear and terror and that attempt that day with filling me with the same proportion of his love, and even more so overflowing instead. It was like a bigger spring. It was far more reaching and had more depth than that scary spring had by far, and filled me up completely. His love is like a wave and renews, refreshes, invigorates us to the fullest. So later in life, as an adult, when I was around 18, I went back to this spot. I stood on the cliff confronting this fear, this deep fear of mine, and I looked down into the Blue Springs hole, and I threw scriptures down into it that I crumpled into a ball, and I lifted my hands up to the Most High and just declared victory in Yahushua's name. The kingdom come, they will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then the Lord sanctified the places I went to and all the secrets people buried in these deep woods and springs and other places that he would make known, he said. So then me and my father end up at the Big Springs Motel after stopping at a parking lot. And my dad's like looking off into this field, sitting in the driver's seat with the door open. Like, I have no idea where I am. And then he starts talking to this guy in a piece of farm equipment. And then this guy leads us to the direction of the Big Springs Motel. So then my father's sitting on the bed there and looking really confused. It was like wood paneling room and a closet. It looked like the house that he built, the way it was decorated. And I asked if he liked it, and he said, yeah, it reminds me of my house, but my house is better. And then he's looking around, feeling the walls. He liked the blue curtains. And he put his hand over his heart and asked me what happened. And at that point, I still didn't trust him, but he got mad and demanded I tell him what happened. So I stood up and told him about the red bottle, and he thought I was crazy. He's like, I don't even drink. What bottle? Like, he didn't know what I was talking about. So I told him about how the red bottle changed him, but I could still feel this demon Howdy trying to come out to the front of his consciousness. And then he like grabbed his head and just held his head there for a while, trying to figure out what was going on. And then the demon Howdy comes out one last time. His face shifts, and he's like, oh, you mean this bottle? And he pulls it out of his pocket. His face kind of twists sideways. It looked like there was like a drop left in the vial, and it tried to grab my arms and pull me in close to make me touch the bottle. But it landed on the floor and it was smashed after rolling around. I mean, this thing looked like a puff of like a genie bottle that just disappeared into thin air on the floor when it broke. Like it broke the spell on my father's mind or something. Because my dad was there. I saw a light come into the room after that. The demon left my present up, and I felt like a huge weight was lifted off. So I go over to my dad and I hugged him, and there was like a spark of light in his eyes again. And I had hope, but that hope never really manifested into any reality that I had dreamed of. I go into the bathroom. I put my hands on the toilet. I just stood in there sobbing for the longest time, like pulling the knife out of my back over and over again. Take a shower. My body literally felt like it had been through a war or a battleground had been waged on it. And I laid down next to my dad. There's a little purple pillow. He was still staring at the wall trying to figure out what happened. And I looked up and would say things to like reorient him and ground him. Like, this pillow reminds me of Nanny's house or something. And then he'd look off and like look sad and stare off. Didn't really know what to say. So then we got food. We got a fish meal. We go into the bar. We call my mother, who was freaking out when he'd leave sometimes, because she'd say he'd always leave. He'd always leave me. So he put me on the phone and just stared right across from me and just looked at me like with stone cold eyes, was like, don't cry. He said very sternly and slowly. So I just switch into alter, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. We went fishing, or, said some lie, but my mom knew I was lying. Because he would tell her in these instances that we did a little fishing or this and that. He just lied all the time. So I slept by him, then woke up, snuck away from him to my own bed. I was too afraid to wake him up by turning the air conditioner off, because he had yelled at me about the air conditioner before, about not being able to read it. So we checked the car in the morning. We have a long ways to go to drive. I get a blanket from the motel. I'm in the back seat of the car. And then we drive past some parks, and he's like, oh, I'll make it up to you. We'll go to these parks. Have a nice trip next time. We go past big cities. I get more relief when I see the lights in the big cities. And as we get closer towards home, he's acting nicer and nicer. He even starts calling me honey, reaching back, feeling my leg, making sure I'm still in the back seat of the car, trying to sugarcoat things. As we get near to home, I'm still in the blanket. I'm like rocking myself back and forth, sitting up in this blanket. There's country music playing, and I'm like, my dad's okay, my dad's okay, my dad's okay. So then he looks guilty as hell when we get home. My older brothers are there. My mom's there. It's like the strange kidnapping events happened, and that nobody really did anything about, though. My older brother saw bruises on my thighs, trauma in my eyes, yelled at my dad by the fridge. I was taken to bed. They knew we weren't on some kind of fishing trip. My older brother even apologized to me once, said that he was going to get me help, get me out of there, that what my grandfather and father did to me wasn't right. But somehow those promises never happened. I mean, I would have probably been better in a foster home where I would have had a chance at normalcy. if I would have been placed with like God-fearing parents. But that was a pipe dream because nobody got anybody the help that they needed, or nobody saw how sick each person really was. So then he does take me and my brother down to these other places, and always trying to make things up constantly, but that still never really worked. Because we go to a place called Elephant Rocks Campground, and we did have a fishing experience, but then when nighttime came, he pulls out another bottle of adrenochrome. I feel a dark presence coming in. Me and my brother end up having to battle Howdy. That came out again, and I told my brother, just watch, Howdy's going to come out again. And it's like my dad turned into a bull, and me and my brother would put our hands out together, standing side by side, and say, the name of Jesus Christ, stop. Because my dad would go into this adrenochrome rage and try to run into us like a raging bull, like he was trying to charge at us. It was really crazy to deal with, but we'd end up breaking the bottle, burning it in the fire, trying to get my dad's consciousness back to normal. Because you never knew what was going to happen or what was going to manifest. That was a good one. So we spoke life back into my father that one night. He even cried a little bit, but he never really got fully delivered either. He eventually did stop taking the adrenochrome, but we were still under mind control. What they did is they just came into each of us and just shut down each of our altars. We still kept going to the Mark Twain forest and Tom Sock areas. There's a breath of fresh air, though, when we leave the forest, like going up to the turning point from the swamp villages in southern Missouri. I was praying for victory each time we turned on certain highway roads, heading north, back up. And I'm glad they put certain markers at certain spots, like big white crosses with blue teardrops on them. A good spot we'd stop at was Walnut Shade Creek. The Holy Spirit would fill us up, wash us clean. We'd let the water go over us in these seats that we called king and queen seats that had big holes in them where the water would just come in and wash right over you. We'd look for the strongest currents in the river. And we'd find healing in nature, in the sunlight, rejuvenation. We tried to keep good memories, the ones that you wanted to hold on to the most. But you seem to lose them over time until God gave them back to. God gives you back certain memories sometimes to glorify him, to honor him for his purposes, to show how many promises he's already fulfilled, how he was there in the story, how he's not absent, and how he fits in and is more powerful than anything any of these people could ever do, and how much he has yet to fulfill. Because the best is yet to come, and we can't even begin to imagine the work that he can do. And I thank God for all the gifts that he gave in me and the gifts that he's just currently even manifesting me. And photographic memory, even all of it you can use for his advantage and for kingdom purposes. So one time we ended up breaking down in Kingsville, Missouri. Of course, we had the camper. It was a blessing because it was a beautiful botanical garden that we stopped at. And so then what ends up happening is that we kept running away from my father. We're not listening to him. My father ends up choking me by this building. I spit in his face. I tell him I wish he was dead. Sometimes he would look at his hand and his hand would start shaking and he'd look like terror was in his eyes when he'd look at his hand, like, oh no, not this again. And then he would get out his leather belt. He'd go into altar. He would look at you not as a person at that point. Not like a human being. He wouldn't look at you like that when he got possessed. And then my brother would say, like, oh, that's not him, right? So then in your mind, you as a child would kind of see it as somebody else when you're told that over and over in your memory bank. So we just lie to ourselves that our dad was a normal person in our lives, but it was just like this mental buffer that we used to never really face the truth and the reality of our situation. So it ended up being like part of the family was like on one side and another part of my family was on another side, like little mini battles and silent battles. It just reinforced the dysfunction because we never really worked through any of the problems. And when our handlers came in, they just like shut down certain altars and reprogrammed us to act like a normal family, like a sleight of hand magic twist. Because my own sister was at the table too, it would sound like this little creature would come crawling up out of her throat when the woman would pull out her altar, because she had files on the table for each one of our altar systems. And my sister had this strange creature voice that would like sinisterly laugh sometimes. So the woman shut down everyone's altars, and everyone had very scary sounding altars except for me and my youngest brother, because ours were just kind of like our normal voices, but just kind of sad and complicit. But there was a big difference that I noticed in what came out of us and what came out of everybody else. And it felt like I was in like a divergent scene, because I'm looking over at my brothers and sister and my parents being handled by puppets by this witch bitch. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you got to be kidding me. Like, it's just a stupid silver watch with a symbol on it or something, though. Like, wake up, people. It's just a sigil. It's like she was using the sigil in her hand with command and code words. And their heads would just go up and down. It's heavy mind control programming, just like they do face erasing. When you're staring at somebody's face and their face starts erasing, you can uncondition yourself to that, though, and reverse these effects and tricks. So I looked right at the woman and backed her out of the door. I mean, because I was completely awake when she started handling us all together in our house. And she was scared of me, so I wasn't as naive and I wasn't as easy to consent. So yeah, she left our house and I had to put up a front to protect my dad's secrets for them. My parents, they were good actors. My mother became this hollowed out shell, just like her slave breeding MK Ultra controlled mother was, because her father was driving at night, kidnapping and abducting and killing children for adrenochrome for the Illuminati. When you push their buttons, you can see them for who they really are, though. And all those demons get rattled and come to the surface again. The demons get mad when they know that you're set free, too. These handlers want you to think that they have all the answers and control and powers to turn demons on and off as personalities, but I knew deep down I shouldn't ask them for any favors and look to them as the people with answers anymore. For it's God, Yahuwah, who is above it all, who has all the answers, who's above and beyond them. He can come in and take over any situation. So many lies we were told. It took decades to break through my family's bullshit, and they can take it all to the grave and all the mounds and mounds of things that they piled and buried me under. I want no part of it, no part in them, and all the filth and garbage and baggage that they pile upon you and live in. That's their comfort zone. That's not mine. All the times they reared their ugly heads at me and I heard their demons mocking me, the name calling, it has no effect over me anymore. God knows you. He sees you for who you are. He'll verify so much for you. I mean, he's so good. I'll sing of the goodness of God my whole life. We were made in brokenness. We were made in his image, which is perfection. And he's the one who can make us whole with one breath. He holds all our fragments, keys, parts, and knows where we lost ourselves and will return us to that point and align us back with his supernal will and judgment. And you want to be in his tender mercies and graces and have his covering before his wrath is poured out on the world, because of things like this that go on and the mystery of iniquities that I was born into. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. He's the good shepherd, the good father waiting for his children to return home to say, my good and faithful son, you've done well. And receive your crown, keep your crown, and cast your crowns at the Messiah. He'll set divine appointments for you to become reconciled back to him if you ask and repent wholeheartedly. Seek him while his face is still can be found, and is here. So I lift up all of the Ozarks now, and I claim this as Yahweh's land. All things here belong to him. I claim hedges of protection around all families, all children that are affected by mind control spirits. I ask for protection around all his children, that they be found, all his elect be found in this region, his bride. I declare victory in the cross, and that the victory has already been won here, and all his promises fulfilled, and prophecies and visions he gave me about this place. And I pray and claim in Yahushua HaMashiach's name, the Nazarite Lion, deliverance, full healing, wholeness, and clearing and cleansing of every dark layer that's permeated the spaces here and bound up hearts and broken lives. This is the Bible of the buckle belt, and his spirit is going to wash clean and do a great, great work here from Missouri to Arkansas and flood and flow on down to other areas. I loose the spirit of liberty and the wellspring of life from the bread of life and the living water himself, even if it means storms and destruction, to the areas of Missouri and Arkansas, where the kingdom of darkness has had its reigns for too long, and for mighty warring angels and guardian angels to find lost souls and lost soul fragments that are frozen and trapped in certain places or objects used against them in SRA, and to demolish and start over these places over as a reset if needed in this process. And for clouds of witnesses to show up, driving out religious spirits and all sorts of other harassing spirits, and for heavenly energies to come in, persecute the wicked, send their harassing spirits back to them to harass themselves, send terror back into themselves, of their own imaginations, torment themselves, send every vain imagination that rises up against the Most High back into themselves, to strike terror into their hearts and make their hearts stop, as they did so many others, and for the legions of angels to come in and do a great work in every area and every angle that needs a touch of God. Lift others up, shed their light into all dark places, all corners, uncover stones and things buried in crime scenes. Lift up the dirt, cleanse all filth, strongholds, drugs, purify these areas and stains on the land, mental illness, so that captives can be set free, minds can be sound, spirits of addictions tied to these places broken off and gone forever. For the angelic realms to come in with spiritual weapons I've never seen before, breaking all principalities and spirits tied to these areas, dominions and rulers, breaking any bondage and curses off anyone involved, chains dropping, freedom in Christ prevailing all through this land, so that God's people can live in peace and harmony with his covering, with his watchful eye upon us, pleasing him and honoring him. More souls can be saved here, the Lord's name praised here and worshipped here, glory penetrating through the veils, light portals coming in through here, powerhouses, spiritual warriors, assignments of the enemy shattered and scattered here. And I ask for more victims to come forth and receive their overdue vindication and recompense, testimonies to come forth. When the Lord makes the path clear for them to do so, let it be so. For those affected by the mystery of iniquity, let them be made white as snow, and for God's justice and mercy to flow and flood through these areas, providing closure and comfort to all those involved in the precious blood of the Lamb, our Messiah, blood redeemer, for all these crimes against humanity, and especially the war on children. Wash our minds clean, give us a pure heart, give us clear hands and a clear conscience. Psalms 101:3. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I hate what faithless people do. I will have no part in it. I will refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar. I hate all who deal crookedly. I will have nothing to do with them. I will not set before my eyes anything that is worthless. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. I will set no worthless thing before my eyes. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. I will set no worthless thing before my eyes. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not fasten its grip upon me. This is a weakness for those who don't resist the devil and make him flee from you. When you lean on your own understanding and fear man instead of God, he will not cover you and protect you. Proverbs 28:26. Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe. The definition of a fool is one who does not for the fear of Yahweh. Leviticus 18:6. No one is to approach any close relative or to have sexual relations with them. I am the Lord. Cursed from Ebal. Cursed is he who has sexual relations with any animal. Cursed is he who sleeps with his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother. Cursed is he who sleeps with his mother-in-law. All the things we did were a disgrace, an abomination, the penalty of the law to be burned with fire because of it, and in their depravity be in bondage and curses. We break those curses and all strongholds and any damage from these experiences in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach of Nazareth, who overcame it all. because he loves us and came here to set us free and makes us new creations in him, breaking every mental chain, every physical chain, every emotional chain, every spiritual chain. My father's attacks continued. People have come to my door, calling me the devil, gaslighting, gang stalking me with this wolf-like mentality, threatening me. Their threats are void, forms of entrapment. I know in my heart that the devil's family didn't win, though, above everything. Even though it took me a long time to catch up and get back on track, the attempts at my life and suppressing the truth would and will always fail. My name means inheritance, bride of the son of Yah, angel scribe, and bearing victory now. My daughter's name means bearing double victory. I bind the strong man in every family of the devil and pray for their salvation or conviction, and for Yeshua to walk into their dreams, return their memories, or convict them in their unrepentant sins. It's his judgment what he does when we pray for our enemies and we hand them over to him. For vengeance is the Lord's. We hand over our families, our loved ones, friends, strangers, etc. in prayer. Anyone for that matter. Some people may go insane even if they get their memories back, but he knows their minds and how to deal with each one of us individually. He'll send Raphael out to meet full justice and vengeance even. Because truth speaks for itself, test all spirits. Don't get distracted on seeking his face daily. He knows who are in this war and how to shelter them, who have gone through things that most humans on this planet wouldn't be able to even handle. But he wouldn't have allowed us to go through them if he didn't put it into our spirits to overcome them, preordain us to overcome them, commission us to walk through them, and sanctify us to walk our difficult paths. We are a part of the Holy End Times remnant army, and nothing can stop us. His truth goes marching on. Maranatha and Amen.